Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is the Ben Checking In podcast. My name is Biniam. Today is July the 8th, 2021, episode 6 of the Ben Checking podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Glad to see some of you guys coming in already on the TikTok live stream, the Instagram live stream, and of course the YouTube. Glad to have you guys here. And already I have some answers to the question, which is fantastic. Reed, glad to see you. Khaled, good morning. Um, Today we are answering the question, which relationships matter to you the most? On the binge checking podcast, there's three aims that I have. First, to grow in my awareness of myself. Second, to pursue my maximum happiness. And third, to learn to be kind to myself. These are some elements that I want to continue to grow in, and I want to share my experience in doing so with you and to encourage you to join me in this same endeavor to grow an awareness of yourself, to maximize your happiness, and to learn how to be kind to yourself. These are things I think are really necessary as we continue to go through this thing we call life. And it's nice to do it with others who are on the same pathway. So, I go through some self reflective questions. I kind of assess the question itself and say, here's the things I like about the question. I go ahead and answer the question. And then I also encourage you guys to share yours as well. So today's question again is, which relationships matter to you the most? Reed has already chimed in saying his relationship with his family matters the most. That's awesome. Um, it's nice to be able to have that kind of place with your family, isn't it, Reed, where you guys are prioritizing each other's connections that way. Um, I've got the TikTok live stream, the Instagram live stream, and the YouTube live stream, like I say, going. So I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts as you chime in on those various platforms. But yeah, welcome to episode number 6. Glad to have you guys join in. So let me consider the question itself first. Which relationships matter to you the most? Um, This reminds me of something. It makes me think of the fact that we are social beings, doesn't it? We are like in community together. We are trying to figure out um, how to interact and relate with one another because as social beings, we kind of have to put up with each other, don't we? Lucas says, my family on the 25th of July, I'm getting tattoos saying family comes first. Amazing. So that's a pretty big deal, too. So Lucas also says for him, it's his family. Um, Saved by Grace says he is having trouble moving on from his ex, even though she has already moved on, and that's a tough one. That's a really big, big one there, isn't it? Saved by Grace. Especially when you make some really deep connections. That's a great question. What do you do when someone really important and close to you has moved on and you quite haven't because the connection was really strong? That's a really, really challenging question. I appreciate the question. Let me think about how to answer that. Um, so when you are with someone and then things don't work out, but they've moved on and you're still trying to figure out why aren't we together anymore? That is a tough one. I would say there is something to be said, Saved by Grace, about how, hey, Brooklyn, how are you? I would say Saved by Grace, it's something about having to acknowledge a couple of really important criteria. And one that is that we can control what we can control best is our responses to the things and the scenarios that are happening around us. So when others are making their choices, we have complete control over how we respond to those choices that others are making. In relation to when someone is moving on and you're not quite ready to move on, here's the thing: you have actually um, well, how can I say this? You've actually, like, they've made their choice to move on because they're not wanting to be in the relationship anymore. For your part, I think part of that process that is really necessary when you have connected with someone as deeply as you have and you're not having trouble moving on is going through that process of what a break means, a break in the relationship. And tough part about that is you wish you could still be together. The reality is they are not on the same page. They're not on the same page because they've actually moved on and they have said, hey, this is my choice. You can't control their choice, right? Saved by grace. And so the way you can honor their choice is by accepting it first and foremost, saying, "Okay, that's what their choice is. I'm not ready to move on, but I can't force them to come back and still be connected with me." And if you can't force them to do that, there's a necessary process of grieving that connection, a necessary process that is really legitimate. And this is a part that most of us do not feel like we want to go through because it's a painful thing, right? It's a painful thing to have to go through that experience when you're like, "Oh, I'm not ready to move on." But we don't get everything we want, but we can control how we're responding. And one of those is to be able to say, how can I meaningfully say goodbye to this relationship, even though I wasn't ready to say goodbye? How can I meaningfully say that it was really deep and meaningful and that it's going to be a huge loss for you? And as you're doing so, how could you be able to say, how can I make my peace with this now in honoring their decision? This is a decision that they've made. You're not happy with it, but he wants to keep moving on in a way of saying, I want to send them off with peace because they've spoken their truth, and you want to speak your truth and saying, I'm still hurting from this. And a huge part of that, saved by grace, means you're going to have to just go through that process of grieving internally, right? And that is really, really important. So that's a tough one. That's a tough one. And it still does have to do with our question, doesn't it? Which relationships matter to you the most? Sometimes, like in the case of saved by grace, it is saying goodbye to some relationships which are really sad. I'm going to talk about some of those today too. But which relationships matter to you the most? It makes me think of how all of us are in some context of community. There are two different kinds of people, or no, three different kinds, I should say. There's extroverts who are like me. We love being around people. We're not really shy being around people. We make friends really easy. We connect with people really easy. So this is our jam. We like connecting with people. And there's introverts who are like, really shy maybe, and they don't really find it helpful to be in big crowds. They like smaller one-on-one contexts usually, and so that's their jam, and so they do not appreciate like being in big crowds or being in front of people. And then there's what we call ambiverts who are very much both end, right? They enjoy being around people, but they also appreciate their alone time as well. So given all that, they usually have a way that they also engage and connect with people. And so the relationships that we can make with others are our connections with them, right? But something that I'm not sure if you've ever thought of is that before a relationship can actually happen where you connect with someone, what usually happens is, first of all, there has to be a revelation. I love this concept. So listen carefully. Before you can connect with someone relationally, whether it's friendship or romantically, what needs to happen is there needs to be a revelation first. And with a revelation, what I mean by this is you need to be able to say to the person, hey, um, my name is so and so. I like this. I don't like this. Here's what my interests are. You need to start revealing things about yourself for that person to get to know you better. In a relationship, what happens is you get to know the other person a lot better. So before you can connect relationally, in whichever way, you need to be doing a lot of revealing of yourself. And that gives you the ability to find out who this other individual is. They're revealing themselves to you. Are we on the same page? Do we enjoy the same things? Are our interests mutually aligned? So that's a really important part, right? Is to consider how you're revealing yourself to someone else and how they're revealing themselves to you. Because in a happy connection that way, you're able to be able to say, okay, I know more about this person so that I can actually connect in meaningful ways. And that's a necessary prerequisite, right? A necessary prerequisite. And yes, I'm just going to give waves to you guys on the live stream, so if that's okay, as you're saying hello while I keep my train of thought. But I'm glad to see you guys chiming in and being a part of the Bin Checking In podcast. We're answering again, for those of you coming in, the question, which relationships matter to you the most? And I was just saying that before a relationship can happen, there has to be a revealing of yourself to this individual and saying, here's who I am, here's what I am about. And that's what we're wired to do as human beings. And as human beings, we are living in a social context where we really do care about having that opportunity to connect with those around us. And that's really critical, especially at the end of the pandemic here, right? Towards the end of the pandemic here, I think most of us are seeing restrictions being lifted. which means for many of us, we've just come through almost 2 years, a year and a half at least, of lots of social distancing, right? Lots of social distancing where you haven't been able to connect with one another in meaningful ways. And along those lines, it's really fantastic when we get to say, yes, we get to get back out there, go for coffee, eat meals in restaurants, visit with each other in our homes. It's been a long time since we've been able to do this. And that is because we wanted to make sure that we are being safe as far as our health. Which relationships matter to you the most? This question is asking us to put on a priority those connections in our lives, those connections that have really served us in deep, tangible ways. I am going to go through my list of connections or relationships that matter the most to me, almost like in a backwards way. I'm going to finish off with my most important connection, my most important relationship, and I'll tell you why that one was my most important one. I haven't seen anyone say it yet, but I want to share with you why my final one is the most important. But let me start off with some of the ones that are super important for me. One of my most important relationships, I'd say, is with my group of friends that I spend time with on a weekly basis. We make time to spend with each other intentionally. Why? Because it's easy for us to let these things slip and slide. It's really easy for us to let these things sort of become if we have time, we want to prioritize those relationships. So with my group of friends, we're extremely intentional because when you get older, life gets busy and we kind of forgets to prioritize some of these things that are really important. And so we feel strongly about maintaining those relationships, not only in a group context, but also one on one. And I appreciate one of the guys in my group. He says, I want to also see you guys one on one through the weekend. So he makes efforts and has encouraged us to do that one on one on the sideline as well too. And so we try to do this every week. We usually get together on a Friday or on a Saturday. We all get together as a group. Let me tell you, the way we're able to dive deep in our friendships, oh, it's so beautiful. When newcomers come into our group, they're seeing how we interact and relate. They're like, you guys are really, really close. You've really established a fantastic dynamic where people feel safe, people feel like they can speak their minds. It's a fantastic thing, but it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work in this relationship context. So one of the relationships that are really important to me is this group of friends that I've prioritized spending time with on a weekly basis. And the way we get together, man, let me tell you, we talk, we have some deep conversations which are rich and wonderful, which enable us not only to do the revealing of ourselves to one another, saying, here's how I really think about these deep topics that we're diving into, but it also gives me an opportunity to be able to learn about them and vice versa, them about me. And when there's massive revelations going on, there's a real potential that those friendships are going to go deep and meaningful. And it's been fantastic to see how we've been able to really invest in each other. It's been really a beautiful thing to watch. So we get together on a weekly basis, like I say, we talk lots, we eat, um, we cuddle on the couch, we share our thoughts and ideas, and also some of the struggles we have along the way. And so it's something really precious to me as I participate and interact with these guys as well too. And second, or no, not second, but next up the rung from my really, really deep friendships that I have of connections that are really important to me would be you guys. Now, I don't know you personally, but one of the things I have been able to experience in the last year and a half, that has really served my soul is I would love to be able to, well, I think I've experienced it. I've experienced this this dynamic that I had set out before I first came on any of these platforms. You see, for the longest time, I had spent maybe 14, 15 years off social media of any variety, from Facebook to everything else. I hadn't been on social media at all, just because one of the things I didn't really enjoy or appreciate about how social media um, facilitated connections or relationships was it seemed to me to be so shallow, right? So shallow, and that all you have to do is click like and or click friend, and now you're supposed to be friends, but there wasn't really any way to get deeper in those friendships. And I do a lot better when I'm face to face with someone, right? I do a lot better when I'm with someone in the same geographical space. That's why, as you watch my YouTube videos with my Uber rides, I love being able to connect with those people because we're in the same vehicle. We can share, we can talk, we can exchange ideas. I love that dynamic. But when it comes to social media, you just feel so far away, and impersonal is really high up there for me. As I recounted my experience, I wanted to be able to, in some way at least, be able to say, hey, with these individuals here, I know them, I can connect with them in meaningful ways. And so that was really important for me. So the big challenge that brought me back on social media was the fact that I had this challenge. And the challenge was, could I be able to, in some way, make deep connections, develop deep friendships with you guys, even though we have never met each other? That was my big challenge. So that's what brought me back to social media. I wanted to see if I could pull this off. And I was so surprised because over the last year and a half, this experiment has become a commitment for me in my life. I wanted to remain connected with you guys because of the way things were evolving. I was able to reveal myself to you guys. I was able to share myself with you guys. And in the context of sharing very candidly about where I am and how I'm seeing life going, some amazing, deep connections have come through. It's been fantastic in such a way that I feel really close to you guys now. I'm able to hear your context where you're at. I'm able to hear how you're struggling with yourself. You're able to reveal things to me, and I'm able to like recognize some of your usernames and say, okay, I recognize this person because of their username. And yeah, Gonzo, I see you coming in, and of course I remember you. So, um, this has been really meaningful, and it's become one of my priorities in my life is to continue to produce content, to have a reason to stay involved in your lives because it has been tangible. It has been such a phenomenal experience for me to be able to say, this is a meaningful connection and one that I value so strongly. And so, thank you guys for being a part of my life. Thank you for chiming in. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of encouraging me as I have endeavored to serve you. So that's been really, really meaningful for me. Love having you guys on here. And I like that some of you guys are coming in saying, hey, it's been a while since I've been on your live, and I'm so glad to see you again. This has been Checking In Podcast, a new endeavor that I'm branching out on to try and serve you well. And so I'm so glad to have you join in. As I continue answering the question, which relationships matter to you the most, I mentioned my group of friends who I've got maintained and developed some deep relationships with. I've mentioned also the online community that I've been able to build with you guys, and it's been so good to have you guys. It's been so good to get to know you, and I value you guys in the way that you not only encourage me but also share yourselves with me, and that means a lot for me. Many of you have given me open invitations to wherever you are in any part of the world, so that has been so meaningful. Now let me move on from there. They say my voice is soothing. Guys, let me tell you, I've been thinking of reading audiobooks. And so I'm planning to start that pretty soon too. Man, there's a lot of things I'm doing to try and serve you guys. And so audiobooks is one of those. So stay tuned. Today, Luke, I'm feeling much better, thankfully. Day before yesterday, I got my second shot. It was a Moderna shot, and I was doing pretty well day before yesterday. But yesterday, I was flattened. My body was just exhausted and tired. I tried to hang out with my kids as best as I could. I went outside and played some games with them and tried to be present, but I was really, really tired and exhausted. So a good part of the day, I was laid out on the bed, sleeping. I was like, oh. But today I'm feeling much stronger. So thankful about that. I'm so thankful. Thank you for asking, Luke. So my third category that I'm working up towards, I would say that it's really important to me by way of relationships. Which relationships matter to me most? It's my relationship with my ex. And I mention her. I mention my ex because she has been one of the most impacting individuals I've ever met, second to my mom. Second to my mom. My ex has been very gracious. There's so many things I've done in the midst of a relationship that have hurt her specifically. And She has been one of the most gracious people who has extended kindness and forgiveness. And I will forever be singing her praise. I'll forever be saying she has been one of the most amazing individuals I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. And so I very much honor my ex. And even now, as we continue to co parent together as three kids, I want to ensure that relationships with her are amazing. I want to make sure that our friendship continues to grow and that she feels honored. And I want to make sure that she knows that I've got her back. And I mean, even today, like I have the kids one extra day today because her work required her to come yesterday. Thanks, Luke. Yeah, it's really encouraging to see that um, that she's able to pursue her own dreams. And I want to facilitate that, right? So I want to make sure that she feels tremendous support from me. In fact, yeah, we're formally separated, but I want to make sure that she knows that even as I go forward in the future, that she's part of my plans. I want to make sure that she's well looked after. I have no thoughts of trying to like make sure that I don't get um, taken advantage of because that's the furthest thing from my mind in relation to my ex. I would say she's been one of those amazing individuals that have come to honor, value, and respect deeply in my life. So I just want to let you guys know the great esteem that I have for my ex. Time is running out, so I better keep going. Times for the podcast around this time here, between 8 and 9 ish. I'm still trying to lock down those times, my dear friend. So the next relationships that I value tremendously are my kids. I've got three kids. They're 10, 8, and 7. And they are fantastic. Love hanging out with them. They're growing up to be amazing specimens of humans. And they're doing some hard work and growing to be individuals of character. And I love watching that growth for them. It's fantastic. It is really, really good. Masked here by Sharjeel. Have you ever thought about getting into new relationships? Yes, I'm open to that. Definitely. So I think I've learned some things along the way. So I'm most open to getting into new relationships. Absolutely. But getting back to this point about my kids, I want to ensure um, that I am able to serve my kids well by being a present dad to them when I have the opportunity to sow into their lives by sharing with them my thoughts, helping them grow with character. But the other part about this is I'm also watching how they're growing. They're growing up to be young adults very soon. And as they're growing up, I want to make sure I give them the honor of being their own people, that they're able to make their own decisions. I don't want to control or micromanage that as they're growing older. So I want to do as best as I can in that department there. And now I eventually want to grow to be good friends with them because as they grow older, I can't always control their outcome, right? And so I want to honor what that looks like for them. So that's really important for me too. Now let me get to the final component that I think. Oh yeah, sorry. Before I move on to my final most important relationship, even more important than my kids. Yes. The other thing I wanted to talk about there was how I've seen this dynamic in relationships between parents and their kids is how the parents and the kids seem as the kids grow older to sort of diverge and grow more distance in the relationship. And I've watched that pattern for many years now, and it's really concerned me. And I've worked with kids a long time to be able to see this dynamic. And I've often thought, why does that happen? And how can I make sure that doesn't happen in my experience? That's really important for me, especially amongst this trend that I've seen is watching how girls grow up into the young ladies, and eventually they and their dads have nothing to do with each other anymore. Usually, is what I've seen. Not always, but I've often seen that, and that's made me extremely sad. It's happened with my sisters and my dad, and I've been really saddened to see that. And so, I have been on the lookout to say, what can I be doing in my life so that that does not happen with me and my girls and my son, of course. But I want to make sure that we don't grow distant. I want to see that we grow closer, and that's really important for me. So that's some important parameters that I've been watching carefully and saying, how can I be careful for that? Because that's important for me to ensure that we're growing in a really healthy direction. So I want to keep watching that by growing with them, changing the way I interact with them, even as they grow older, to give them more independence and more autonomy in making their own choices, even if I may disagree. So that's really important to me. But now let me get to the last one because time is running away on me. The most important relationship to me right now is the relationship with myself. Now, this sounds kind of weird, but let me break it down. The most important relationship for me is my relationship with myself because when I consider how I am interacting with my within my headspace, the way I'm thinking about myself, the way I'm talking to myself, for many years it used to be devastating. Devastating. And I'm not sure if you can share in my experience, but the way I had relationships with myself and the way I thought about myself, I always spoke down to myself. I always tore myself apart. I always discouraged myself. I always ripped myself apart saying, oh, you're so dumb. You're so stupid. Why can't you do this better? And so the way my mind spoke to myself in that relationship was absolutely devastating. I would never think about talking the way I talk to myself to anyone else, but that's how I often and regularly talk to myself. Tell me, do any of you relate that way? Because I think there's so many of us that do that. And so one of the reasons that I do this podcast again, my dear friends, is because I want to address that. I want to address that head on. I want to say, how can I speak a new narrative to myself? How can I speak in a new way whereby I am affirming myself? I am practicing to be kind to myself. One of the pillars of why I'm doing this podcast is how to learn to be kind to ourselves because it is that critical, right? We are so harsh on ourselves often. We speak down to ourselves, we rip ourselves apart, and we do not invest the time to be able to encourage ourselves and saying, man, I'm a really amazing individual. I am so kind. I am so patient, or whatever good qualities you can honestly say about yourself to yourself. That's a really important thing, isn't it, guys? Really important thing is to learn how to speak kindly to ourselves because when we start off here, then we're able to do it to those around us in meaningful ways. When we're kind to ourselves first, we're able to encourage those around us. And that's a really critical starting place, a really important starting place. And so that's where I'd like to challenge you guys, especially to consider what is your relationship with yourself looking like? Really important. My dear friends, this has been episode 6 of the Bin Checking In podcast. I am so glad to have had you join me in this one here. 3 reasons I'm doing this podcast, the Bin Checking In podcast. The first is to grow in learning about ourselves by asking these self reflective questions. Second is to be able to be kind to ourselves. To learn to be kind to ourselves, like I was saying, is not an easy task, but it's so important. What does it look like for us to be kind to ourselves and to learn to grow in that ability? And third, it's to maximize our happiness. Now, let me tell you, on my website, yes, I do have a website. It's called Bin Asterisk. No, it's biniumasterisk.com. Biniumasterisk.com. On my website, I've got a free resource, a free mini course that I would love to commend for your benefit. It's called How to Truly Be Happy Without Faking It. This mini course, I pack in there 3 key ingredients that I have come to narrow it down to of how I'm able to keep in the zone of happiness consistently, um, intentionally, and abundantly. I love being happy, but I know happiness is not the only emotion that we're supposed to center on. So consider going to biniumasters.com/happiness. Download that free resource in which I want to share with you how I stay in this zone of happiness. And I'd love for you to start your process. I wish I could say the things that I propose there are easy, but they're not. So, disclaimer here, it's some really intense stuff I'm asking you to walk through. But isn't your happiness worthwhile, guys? Isn't your happiness worthwhile to engage in that way? And I would love to partner with you in joining to see you growing in that happiness. So, along those lines, consider my membership tiers here. I would love to partner with you as we change the world to make it more kind. Hello, DK. Good to have you back as I'm just about to finish, but I'm so glad that you guys are here. So, the BennyMasters.com website is up and running. So, I'd love to have you guys join me there. Listen, I do live streams 3 days a week where I focus on your guys' questions. I have not been able to do that here because it's been kind of tough given that you guys are asking questions on various topics, but I'm sticking with the question I have on hand. If you want to be part of those opportunities, then you guys join up on one of my tiers, and I'd love to be able to join and connect with you even more so. So that's on the tiers. Check those out on the BinnyMasters.com website. Today is July the 7th. I believe it's a Thursday. No, July the 8th. There we go. July 8th, Thursday. I hope you have a fantastic day today. Consider your relationships as we say goodbye. Which ones are meaningful? Which ones you want to continue investing in? Which ones you want to maybe say goodbye to? And when it's tough to say goodbye, consider what grieving looks like, because that's a necessary process too, isn't it? My dear friends, thank you for joining in on the Binge Checking podcast. Love you guys. Thank you for joining in. It's usually around this time here that I'm coming on in this hour space here. So come and join me next time. Tomorrow we'll be back on again. And until then, I hope you have a fantastic day. I'm going to say goodbye to my friends on TikTok first. TikTokers, thank you for being here. I love you guys tremendously. We'll touch base soon. Bye for now. And of course, next, I'm going to say goodbye to my friends over on Instagram. Instagrammers, much love to you as well. So appreciate you guys. Continue interacting with me. I'll be back here again tomorrow. Check out the recording of this live stream and let me know your thoughts. Until then, I'll talk to you soon. Bye. And then, of course, now my YouTube audience. Thank you for being here, guys. So appreciate you guys as well. Leave me your comments, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Talk to you soon. And of course, those on my